There's a new Airbnb hack that no one talks about, but if you use it, you can make thousands of dollars every single month. By the end of this video, I'll show you the exact framework that you can use to make thousands of dollars in the next 30 days with a new Airbnb business model called co-hosting that no one talks about because it has not got caught up in social media yet, while only spending an hour per week working on the actual business. And in case you didn't know, co-hosting has three major benefits. One, you need no prior Airbnb experience to get started. Number two, you do not need any cash of your own to get started. Number three, you can manage the entire business remotely from anywhere in the entire world from your phone or your laptop. Most Airbnb beginners are actually losing money on Airbnb because they're not using the right system. I'm going to show you what system I use to make 30 to 40K every single month if you're thinking about getting into the Airbnb space if you stay until the end of this video. So my name is Austin Palacios. I've been investing in Airbnbs for the past 5 years, as well as grown an Airbnb management company to 37 properties under management. With this system, last month I made $35,000, and the month previous to that I made $41,000. There are three different ways to get started with Airbnb, and most people only know about the first two, which are going to be Airbnb arbitrage as well as Airbnb investing. So let's go ahead and break them down, the pros as well as the cons. Airbnb arbitrage, what you pretty much do is you rent a property from a landlord, and then you pay to furnish it and design that property and then put it on the Airbnb platform and make the difference between what you pay in rent as well as what you make on the Airbnb platform. But what a lot of people don't realize when you're getting into Airbnb arbitrage is you have to pay the first month, the last month, as well as the security deposit to go ahead and get into that actual property. So depending on which property you're going after, it can be anywhere from 5K to 15K for the first month, last month, and security deposit. But then you have to pay to design the actual property. So are we choosing a property that's a studio or one bedroom, or are we going after a property that's a 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom house? If it's a studio, then it could be as little as 3K to design the actual property. But if you're designing a 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom house, it could be anywhere from 15 to 20K to fully design the actual property. So all in, you're looking at 8K to 30K to get started in Airbnb arbitrage. But the biggest challenge with the Airbnb arbitrage that not a lot of people realize is you do not get any appreciation with the actual property. You have no equity in the actual business because you do not own that actual property. And one of the biggest things with the Airbnb arbitrage, it usually takes you 6 months to an entire year to get paid back your initial investment of 8K to 30K, depending on what type of property you're going after, which means you don't start making profit until 6 months or a year later. And a big one that not a lot of people think about is whenever something breaks at the actual property, you have to wait for the landlord to actually fix that item, unless you want to take it out of your profits to then pay for something to break. And I want to give you an example here really quick. I did Airbnb arbitrage one time in West Palm Beach. It was a 4-bedroom house. I invested $5,000 first month, $5,000 last month, $5,000 security deposit, so $15,000 all in, as well as paid to design and furnish the actual place, which cost me another $15,000. I was all in about $30,000, and I went live in June in South Florida. And as you know, the temperature in South Florida is extremely hot in the summertime. And when guests were coming in, the thermostat was not getting below 79 degrees. And obviously that's not a comfortable temperature to be at. What I came to find out is the AC compressor was completely fine, but the house was built in the 1960s and the ductwork in the house had not been replaced, which is how the cold air travels through the actual house. It took the landlord 3 weeks to replace the entire ductwork, with me constantly calling him every single day and asking him to replace it. Because what I was having to do is I was having to refund guests portions of their actual stay so they would not leave me negative reviews. And during that period, I ended up losing thousands of dollars because that landlord took 3 weeks to replace that ductwork. So I would highly advise not getting into Airbnb arbitrage. So the next Airbnb business model that I'm actually a fan of is investing in Airbnbs. So it's where you buy an actual house and then you put 20% down, you pay to design it, furnish it, and then you launch it as your own investment property. So say, for example, you usually want to buy a house that's $500,000, you put 20% down, that comes out to $100,000, right? So we have $100,000 as a down payment, and then we need to pay to furnish and design the actual property, which is, if it's going to be a 4-bedroom house, you're looking at about $25K in design if we're being very aggressive. So all in, you're looking at about $125,000 to buy your first Airbnb investment property. But hey, not everybody has $125,000 to be able to invest in Airbnbs. And hey, if you've never done anything with Airbnbs before and you're willing to risk $125,000 on your first property, it's a little bit foolish in my mind. But there's a brand new way to get involved in Airbnbs that no one's currently talking about because it has not got caught up on social media yet. And it's called Airbnb co-hosting. And it's pretty much where you manage Airbnbs for other people who currently do not have the time to do it. And with you managing for them, you make 20% of all the income that the property actually generates. And the biggest benefits of it are you don't need a down payment. You don't have to invest any of your own capital. You can manage this business from anywhere in the entire world from your laptop or your actual phone. And the biggest one is you have no risk and you have no liability. And all you have to do is manage guest communication, schedule cleaners, as well as schedule maintenance people. And for doing all of that, you make 20% of all the income that the property generates. And the best part about this is you can automate all these different things such as guest communication, cleaning, scheduling maintenance people, now with AI automation in 2025 going into 2026. And we'll get into all those different AI automation tools that you can use later in this actual video. Do you understand how big of a gold mine this is currently, where you can get into the Airbnb space? You don't have to buy an actual property. You don't have to rent a property. You don't have to be on the risk for liability. And all you have to do is just manage Airbnbs for other people who don't have the time to manage their own Airbnb and don't want to learn how to do it themselves. What I want you to do right now is take a look at this graph over here. This is a graph of all the Airbnb listings that have come to the marketplace over the past 10 years, starting in 2016. And what we see here is a steady incline going all the way up to 2019, and then COVID ended up happening, causing a steep decline. After COVID, the market ended up rebounding. And what we're seeing now is a healthy business model that's growing year over year at a steady incline going back over the past 6 years. And now we're currently at 8 million listings that are currently on the Airbnb platform. So pretty much what this shows me, what this graph illustrates to myself, is that every single year there's going to be more and more people currently buying Airbnbs. And as more and more people buy Airbnbs, there's going to be more and more people that currently need a co-host to manage that property for them because they don't have the time to manage it and they don't want to learn the systems to actually manage their property for themselves. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about how you're paid as an actual Airbnb co-host, and let's talk about how many properties under management you would need to hit your goal. Maybe you're looking to make an extra $5K per month in income. Maybe you're looking to make an extra $10K per month in income. Whatever that number is, I want to go ahead and explain to you right now how many properties and how you can actually do that to hit your actual goal. All right, so as an actual Airbnb co-host, you're paid 20% of all the income that the property generates. So the nightly rate, cleaning fees, pool heating fees, anything that generates income for the actual Airbnb, you take 20% of that actual income. So me personally, I only target properties that are doing at least a minimum of $5,000 a month in income, with my preference of going after homes that are doing at least $10,000 a month in income. So for example, a property that would do $10,000 a month in income would be a 4-bedroom pool house if I was located down here in South Florida. If I'm located in the Smoky Mountains, it would probably be a 4-bedroom cabin house that's overlooking the Great Smoky Mountains, if you will, for example. Or if you're in Scottsdale, it's probably a 4-bedroom pool house as well. So just to give you an idea, a property that would do about $5,000 a month would probably be about a 3-bedroom house in a good location. So let's go ahead and run the numbers now. So if a property is generating $5,000 a month in income, and we're charging 20%, we would make $1,000 a month in income. And if we're going after a home that's doing $10,000, and we're charging 20%, we would make $2,000 per month, right? So I've even seen houses that do $20,000 a month in income. And then if a property was doing $20,000 a month in income, they're very luxury, they're very high end, but they're out there. You would just double this number. 20,000 times 20% would be $4,000 a month in income. But for the bare minimum, let's just focus on a conservative property right here, $5,000 or $10,000 a month in income with us charging 20%. So if our goal was $5K per month in income, let's do the numbers on how many properties under management we would actually need to hit that. So if it was $5K, and we're making $1,000 a month in management income at 20% of $5,000, we would need 5 properties to hit that number. If we were going after homes that were doing $10,000 a month in income and we were charging 20%, we would need about 2.5 to 3 properties, right? But now let's say our goal was 10K a month in income, right? How many of these properties would we need to hit 10K a month in income? We would need 10 properties. And if our goal was still 10K a month and we're going after homes that were doing $10,000 a month in income, how many properties would we need? We would need 5 properties under management, right? So you really need to determine like what your goal is. How much income are you looking to bring in? And then once you know that, you can analyze how many properties you would need under management depending on how much income that actual property is going after. Are you going to be more conservative and go after homes that are doing $5,000 a month in income, which is completely fine if you want to start that way? Or do you want to go after more of the higher end properties that are going to do $10,000 a month in income? It's completely up to you. Or do you want to go after the very luxury high end properties that are going to do $20,000 a month in income? A big thing for me is always focus on quality of home over quantity of home. It's going to be the same amount of effort to manage a house that's doing $5,000 a month in income versus managing a house that's doing $10,000 a month in income. But it's so important to have your branding tailored to that type of home that you're going after within your actual market itself. Quality over quantity every single day with Airbnb co-hosting. All right, now I want to dig a little bit deeper on what you actually do as an Airbnb co-host. So you do all the guest communication for the actual guests. So you do, whenever they have questions about potentially booking the actual property, you reply to them, you let them know. Maybe they want to know if there's any type of amenities that are close by to the actual house. Are there any pools? Are there any water parks? Are there any national reserves? Are there any museums? Like whatever that is, you message that guest back whenever they're looking to book that actual property, answer any questions they have. After that, 24 hours before they check in, you're going to send them a check-in instructions message explaining how to get to the actual property, what the address of the actual property is, what the Wi-Fi code is, if they need anything for their actual stay. All that guest communication, you handle it. The second thing that you're going to do as an Airbnb co-host is you're going to schedule all the cleaners. So you're going to find a quality cleaner that specializes in cleaning Airbnbs to clean this actual property. And whenever a booking comes in, you're going to notify that actual cleaner and let them know that we have a booking coming in on this day and checking out on this day as well, and making sure that they're providing quality service with cleaning that actual property. It is so important to find a quality cleaner because imagine yourself, you go to a hotel and you pay $300, $500 a night, $100 a night, $200 a night, whatever that number is, and you get there and the property is dirty. You're not going to have a great experience. First impressions make a huge impact on every single guest. So make sure that you're finding a quality cleaner to clean the Airbnbs for the properties that you're managing for. The next thing you're going to be responsible for as an Airbnb co-host is property management, making sure we're setting pricing accordingly based on the time of the year that people are booking. So for example, if you're in the Smoky Mountains and you're targeting that market, the best time the majority of people want to come in is September, October, because that's when the leaves change. People want to come in, they want to see the leaves change, they're willing to pay more money to be there. So we need to make sure our prices are higher for that time of the year so we're capitalizing on the most amount of income that actual Airbnb can make so the homeowner is making as much income as possible. Now when it's lower, like January, February time, is freezing in the Smoky Mountains, so nobody really wants to be there, right? All the leaves are dead, it's cold, it's probably snowing. So we need to be able to drop those rates and know what the market can actually support for that time of the year. The other thing that you want to do is you want to make sure you're charging more for weekend stays versus weekly stays as well. Remember, your job for this Airbnb property as a co-host is to make the owner as much money as possible, as well as providing a good quality guest experience so that they're able to get 5-star reviews. The more 5-star reviews you get, the higher income the property is going to end up making and the higher income that you're going to end up making as an actual Airbnb co-host as well. All right, so let's get into the biggest advantage of being an Airbnb co-host in 2025 as well as going into 2026. There is now AI automation to automate everything that I just talked about before. Guest communication, pricing management, cleaning scheduling, so that you're only spending 1 hour per week per property under management to make an extra $1,000 to $2,000 a month in income. All right, so the first one that I want you to look at is called Hospitable. So this allows you to automate all your guest messaging, all the check-in instructions I talked about, all the checkout instructions, basic common questions as well too. We can use AI to message these guests back in an automated fashion, so you don't actually have to spend the time texting nonstop at your actual work. These check-in instructions and check-out instructions are all fully automated, meaning if you have a job, you're working a 9 to 5, and you can't text a guest back, we have automations now to be able to text that guest back quickly so that you don't have to actually worry about it yourself. So say, for example, a guest messages you while you're in a meeting at work and says, hey, look, I'm looking for my check-in instructions. The AI automations with Hospitable will go ahead and send that over to them if it's within a 24-hour time frame. If it's not within 24 hours of their check-in, the software will go ahead and notify them and let them know, hey, look, you're not within your 24-hour time period. We'll be sending that 24 hours before you check into your actual property. So you don't have to actually worry about it and do it. The second AI software that I want to mention now is called Turno. Now, Turno has been a complete game changer for me. So it does multiple different things, but the main thing that it focuses on is cleaning for actual Airbnbs. So what you can use this for is it automatically schedules your cleaners whenever a booking comes in. So you get a booking from Airbnb, VRBO, Booking.com, whatever that looks like. Whenever that comes in, you accept that booking. The cleaner gets notified right away to accept that booking. It gets added to their calendar so they know when the guest is checking in as well as when the guest is checking out. On top of that, Turno has a photo section. So whenever the cleaner actually gets to the actual property, they can take photos of the actual property when a guest was actually staying there. So the cleaner can then take photos whenever they get to the actual property to document if there's any damage that happened to the actual property whatsoever. So if we need to, we can submit a damage claim to Airbnb and we do not have to actually go to the property ourselves. On top of that, after the cleaner finishes cleaning, they then take photos of the actual Airbnb property and then upload them to Turno so you can then check the quality of the work that the cleaners are actually doing. Once again, making it so that you don't have to actually go to the property and check the cleaner's work. And as I was mentioning before, it's so important to find quality cleaners that specialize in cleaning Airbnbs because it's a completely different business model of cleaning Airbnbs versus cleaning long-term rentals like a place that you would potentially live at. So the best part about Turno is that you can actually make a job posting on Turno that you're looking for an actual Airbnb cleaner within a specific market. And then what will then happen is all these cleaners within that market will then apply for that job. And all these cleaners have reviews. It's like Uber or Yelp. You can see all their reviews on the past quality cleans that they did for other owners. And you can look at the reviews before you actually hire them. And another advantage is that you can have two cleaners on one property. You have a primary cleaner and then you have a secondary cleaner. So say, for example, your primary cleaner is busy that day and can accept that booking. It will then get rerouted to your secondary cleaner. So you always have somebody there to clean the property so that you never have to worry about the property not being cleaned before a guest actually checks in. Lastly, you can fully automate all the pricing management for that actual Airbnb using a software called PriceLabs. PriceLabs adjusts the pricing for the Airbnb based on the seasonality of the actual market. So say, for example, you're in the Smoky Mountains again, and September and October is very high season for that market. It'll raise the price per night for that actual Airbnb. Or say you're in Nashville and there's a big country concert in town. Morgan Wallen's coming in town. Whatever that is, as more Airbnbs in that market get booked, PriceLabs then notices that and then starts increasing the nightly rate that we can potentially charge these guests. On top of that, it'll automatically adjust a higher nightly rate on the weekends and a lower nightly rate for the weekdays as well so that you don't have to actually worry about it. You don't have to be a pricing magician to actually do this. You can utilize PriceLabs and it'll do all the pricing on your behalf. So these three softwares are the reason why we're able to automate all of the work as an Airbnb co-host to only an hour per week per property under management. PriceLabs does pricing management. Turno finds your cleaner and automatically schedules your cleaner. And Hospitable does all the guest messaging automations on your behalf if you're in meetings at work. Let's go ahead and talk about how you can actually start and launch this business within the next 24 hours from right now. All right, so the first thing that you want to go ahead and do is start an LLC. So there's actually a company that you can utilize for free that will set up your LLC for you. Usually it takes 2 weeks to about 4 weeks to fully get your LLC set up. But if you use their paid version, it can take as little as 1 week. And that website, what it's called is called Bizee, Bizee. And you can set it up. You pick the state that you want to focus on, put in your information, and it'll go ahead and go through the process of setting up your LLC for you so that you don't actually have to pay for it. All right. The next thing that we want to go ahead and do is we want to go ahead and build a website. Now, it's so important with starting any business to get people to actually take you seriously, to position yourself as professional, as an authority within that actual market. And to do that, we have to have our branding completely tailored to the type of homes that we want to manage. So let me give you an example again. If we're based here in South Florida, and we're going after homes that are going to produce $10,000 every single month in income. They're going to be 4-bedroom houses with a pool, 15 minutes away from the beach, designed in a boho coastal themed. So if those are the homes that I'm actually going after, what do you think my website and my branding needs to be tailored to? Exactly. They need to be tailored to that type of clientele, that type of home, if that's what I'm going after. If I'm going after luxury homes that are going to do $20,000 a month in management income, and my branding is positioned towards homes that are going to do $10,000 a month in income, how likely are those potential clients to actually take me seriously, right? So you need to be very specific on who you're going after, who your ideal client is, so that you can tailor your branding to that ideal client that you want to actually work with. Because if your branding isn't tailored to that actual individual client, they're not going to take you seriously. All right, so we need to set up our website. A good site to host a website is called Wix. I believe it's about $100 to get your website set up, and then they just charge you $15 to $20 per month to host your actual website. So go ahead and get that set up. You can utilize Wix. The other thing that you're going to need is a domain for your email address, as well as to host your actual website itself. So we're going to need a domain. And then you can actually buy a domain on GoDaddy.com. You can literally get one in a matter of hours. It doesn't take you very long to set that up. Once you have a domain, you can then have an email address with your company domain, as well as a website with your company domain. It just makes you look so much more official whenever you're speaking to these actual property owners. Imagine you own an Airbnb and somebody emails you about potentially managing your property, and it's like their name at gmail.com, or it's john@luxuryrentals.com. Who are you more likely to take serious, right? At the end of the day, set up your domain, set up your website. It's going to make a huge difference on how likely people are to actually take you seriously. The next thing that you're going to want for setting up your actual business is going to be an EIN number. You can get this from the actual government. Just type in EIN on Google, and then it'll pop up how you actually qualify for an actual EIN number. Once you have an EIN number in place, and once you have your LLC created, you can then open a bank account. So say, for example, you go to Wells Fargo, you go to Chase, it doesn't really matter. When you go to Chase or when you go to Wells Fargo, they're going to ask you for the LLC information as well as the EIN number. Once you have that, you'll be able to open up a business bank account. All this can be done in literally 24 hours, this whole process. You can set up your LLC on Busy. It's probably going to take you 20 to 30 minutes to do. Start setting up the website on Wix. It's probably going to take you about an hour to do. Get the domain from GoDaddy. It won't take you very long, maybe 20 minutes. Get the EIN number. It's probably take you about 10 to 20 minutes as well. Set up the bank account at Chase. Will probably take you about an hour. So all in, you could literally have your first Airbnb co-hosting business set up within 24 hours. So now what I want to do is I want to show you the way that beginners that are starting an Airbnb co-hosting are trying to find clients. And honestly, these ways I'm about to show you take them a lot of time, a lot of energy, and honestly a lot of money to be going through it this way. But there's a better way that can expedite the entire process, get you landing co-hosting clients that are paying you $1,000 to $2,000 every single month within 30 to 45 days after we go through these. All right, so the first way that people find co-hosting clients is by building relationships and partners with real estate agents or brokers in their actual market. So what they'll end up doing is they'll go to an actual agent's office and say, hey, look, I'm an Airbnb co-host in this actual market. Do you have any clients that potentially need me to manage for them, right? A lot of the time, the agent really isn't going to take you that seriously. They've never met you before. You literally just walked into their office. A good way to go about doing it this way, if you want to take this long approach, because it's going to take time to build rapport with this actual agent and for them to actually get leads for people that are currently looking for Airbnbs to buy, you can add value to them in two different ways. If I was going this way, which I don't recommend doing, I would tell the agent, hey, look, if you have anybody that's potentially looking at having their property being managed as an actual Airbnb, or they need a manager, I'm happy to run an analysis for you to let you know on how much income that property could potentially produce, right? So you run the analysis, you're able to add value to one, the real estate agent, as well as a potential prospect that's looking to buy that actual Airbnb. The second way that you can potentially add value is go to a real estate brokerage and speak to the broker of that actual brokerage and say, hey, look, I'd like to run an analysis on teaching your agents how to run the numbers effectively if they're analyzing deals for potential clients that they're working with on what the Airbnb could potentially produce. So you give that presentation, and then at the very end of that presentation, you then say, hey, look, if you guys still don't get this and you have anybody that's potentially looking at buying an Airbnb, if you send it to myself, I'll go ahead and run that analysis for you and for them. And by the way, I'm an Airbnb property manager in this actual market too. And if you have anybody that needs a co-host or a property manager, I can do that for you. And on top of that, what I'll do for you is I'll give you a referral fee for anybody that ends up signing up with me. So utilizing agents can take a very long time to get co-hosting clients in the door, because you have to think about it this way. You have to build rapport with the actual agent. The agent has to help a buyer find a property. So then they have to find a property, they have to close on the property, they have to get financing for the property. After they close on the property, they then have to design that property. They then have to furnish that property. They then have to launch that property. They have to build the Airbnb listing. That could take anywhere from 3 months to 6 months to as long as a year for you to close your first client through the real estate agent program. The second way Airbnb beginners try to find clients is they utilize Facebook groups. So there's a lot of Airbnb co-hosting Facebook groups where a lot of other people that are looking to get into the co-hosting space will sit on for hours a day looking for people that own an Airbnb that are gonna say, hey, look, I'm looking for a co-host in this actual market. But when that actually happens and they make a post to say, hey, look, I'm looking for an Airbnb co-host in Lexington, Kentucky, all those other co-hosts that are on that Facebook group will then comment on that actual post and say, hey, look, I'm a co-host. I can manage your property for you. So you have so much competition dealing with all these other Airbnb beginner co-hosts that are looking to get that actual business. What will end up happening is 20 to 30 other people will then comment on the Airbnb Facebook post. And then that Airbnb homeowner will probably choose 5 people to potentially interview. And then of those 5 people, eventually one of those 5 people will drop their management rate from 20% down to 10% just to get that deal done. And that Airbnb homeowner will end up moving forward with those people. Facebook groups are completely saturated. You will literally waste your time scrolling on Facebook groups trying to find somebody that's looking for a co-host. The third way that beginners will try to find co-hosting clients is utilizing a website called Zillow. So Zillow, a lot of people will post their long-term rentals for rent on there. So say you have a home, you're looking for a tenant to put in place for that actual home, you'll post it on Zillow, and then you'll have all these applications come in for people that are currently looking for a place to rent. So what a lot of beginners will do that are looking to get into co-hosting, they'll message that homeowner and say, hey, look, have you ever considered making your property an actual Airbnb? The homeowner will probably say no, but show me what it could potentially produce. The aspiring co-host will then run an analysis on how much income the property will make. Majority of the time, property will make more as an actual Airbnb versus a long-term rental. But here's the kicker though. The owner of that rental is bought in on how much income they can potentially produce. Then the co-host has to explain how much income he has to dump into that actual property to, one, design it, as well as furnish it. It's usually $20,000 to $30,000 to fully furnish an actual house. So as I'm sure you can imagine, that's honestly a very big objection for these homeowners that are considering making their property from a long-term rental over to an actual Airbnb. The other biggest challenge that you potentially have with using this strategy is these homeowners aren't used to how Airbnbs are currently run. So they're always so worried about a guest throwing a party at their actual property and damaging their entire property, as well as the $20,000 to $25,000 of furniture that they just used to design that property. So utilizing Zillow, you're gonna face a lot of sales friction because of the fact is these people don't have their property set up as an Airbnb yet. They have to fully furnish it. They got to fully design it. They have to trust you to manage it. And on top of that, they're going to be worried about people damaging their property by staying in it as an actual Airbnb. But don't worry, there's a way easier way than utilizing Zillow, utilizing Facebook groups, and waiting for referrals from agents to come in to just give you co-hosting clients. And let's go ahead and jump into it. All right, I cannot exaggerate this enough to you. This is going to be the absolute best way in 2025 and going into 2026 to land Airbnb management clients, co-hosting clients. And I'm going to break it down for you right now. So what you want to do is you want to target existing Airbnb homeowners that are currently being managed by larger property managers. The reason that we go after them is for a few different things, but I want you to picture this. They're already set up as an Airbnb. They're already paying somebody 20%. And thirdly, they're not happy with the service they're being provided. And you're probably asking yourself, why are they not happy with the service being provided? Well, let's go ahead and break them down. There's two major large corporations that manage thousands and thousands of Airbnbs. Number one is going to be Vacasa. Number two is going to be Evolve. Now, these property managers manage thousands and thousands of listings all across the US. And what their main focus is bringing on as many clients as possible. And when you bring on as many clients as possible, the quality service that you're able to provide to each individual owner ends up going down. So what I want you to think about is I want you to picture all these different markets all across the US. There's markets in Miami, there's markets in Tampa, there's markets in Scottsdale, Arizona, California, New York, everywhere. They have a property manager in each of these markets. That property manager is responsible for managing 80 to 100 listings by themselves. How much time and attention do you think somebody has in a day? They're working 40 hours a week. How difficult do you believe it is to manage 80 to 100 listings, owners, communications every single month? On top of that, think about how many guests they're getting to check in and out of that actual property a month. They're probably getting 500 turnovers a month total for their actual individual market. Now, when you have 500 turnovers and 100 owners to communicate with every single month, as I'm sure you're aware, things are going to be delayed, making it so challenging for the Airbnb homeowner to get a hold of their manager. And if it's hard for the Airbnb homeowner to get a hold of their manager, how difficult do you believe it's going to be for a guest that's on vacation, that paid thousands of dollars to stay at an actual Airbnb? How difficult is it going to be for them to actually get a hold of that same manager? Pretty difficult. So if it's difficult for an Airbnb guest to get a hold of their manager, what is that going to actually relate to? That's going to relate to, one, negative reviews. Once you start getting bad reviews on your Airbnb listing, Airbnb starts pushing you down line by line on the Airbnb platform. So instead of you ranking on page 1 or page 2, you're getting pushed to page 10 or page 15 on the Airbnb algorithm. When that occurs, that means people are having to scroll 10 to 15 different pages before they find your actual Airbnb listing. Less people see the Airbnb, which means less visibility equals less profit. Which is why these Airbnb homeowners aren't happy with the current manager that they have in place. Because for one, it's hard to get a hold of their Airbnb manager. Two, they're getting bad reviews for their actual Airbnb. And three, and the most important one, is they're not making as much income as they should be making with their actual Airbnb. Which is why this is such a gold mine if you're looking to get into Airbnb co-hosting. You can land your first client in literally 30 to 45 days. That's generating you $1,000 to $2,000 per month per client by just following this framework. By the way, if you want to learn exactly how I get a hold of these homeowners, how I approach the conversation, and how I close these clients, go ahead and hit the link below and schedule a call. And with that, I'll see you in the next video.